morning, everyone. This is Brian Wagner, Chief Architect of Prodigio RTS. Welcome to today's Prodigio chat, where we're going to give a brief overview of the Prodigio trading platform and talk about what it's capable of doing with regard to automated trade idea generation, automated trade setups and position management, Wizard Lab, and various other features. We're also going to talk a little bit about the scanning system that we're building, give you guys a little overview of what you can expect for that. And in general, today should be a nice introduction into the Prodigio trading platform. We've gotten some requests lately to cover some more of the basics so people can get started right away. And the beautiful thing about Prodigio and about Wizard Lab is that it's very simple to get running right out of the box. So I'm going to demonstrate some of these ideas today to try to get your mind thinking in terms of what you can do with the system. Prodigio RTS is the automated trading system offered exclusively by TD Ameritrade and thinkorswim. It is available from your thinkorswim platform, and in order to get Prodigio, you need to request Prodigio activation on your thinkorswim account. Send an email into support@thinkorswim.com with the subject line Prodigio activation. Follow us on the web, on Twitter. We are twitter.com/wizardlab. Our home on the web is www.prodigiorts.net, and there you can find a forum to ask questions, to develop strategies, but more importantly the video archive where all of these chat sessions, which we hold every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern, 11 o'clock Central, are archived under the tab Video Archives. Any questions that you have about the Prodigio platform can be sent in to prodigio@thinkorswim.com. And you can always join us here in the chat room during the week to talk about various questions, to ask things about strategies, etc. Speaking of strategies, we are developing a lot more with respect to strategies. So I know there's been some requests for new studies. We've added some more studies. We've added some more study components for things such as current day information, things of that nature. We're working on a very broad fundamentals build, which we're tying right into the scanning system. And we'll probably get to show off the scanning system a little bit in next week's chat, so make sure you're here for that. But to get started, Prodigio, I want to start with the foundations. It's an automated trading system, and the emphasis of Prodigio is in order to be able to rapidly and efficiently automate management of equity trading positions. Now we're always expanding the system. Right now it is primarily an equities trading platform, but we are adding support for all kinds of instruments. So you'll see Prodigio continue to grow, especially going into the new year. The concept is on rapid management. In other words, to be able to manage the execution or automated execution of trades in the most efficient way as possible, reducing latency. And that's where you really gain in penny types of scalps when you put your order in and it can execute within milliseconds or even nanoseconds. The less human interaction that you have, the better your chances for getting favorable fills, which leads to favorable profits and losses. This, of course, extends not only to day trading, but also to your swing trading and even your investment trading as well. It comes with a number of features that facilitate this automated and semi-automated management. So, for example, here's an overview of the portfolio, which shows me all of the positions that I have open all at the same time. The portfolio gives me quick access to all of the positions that I have open, so that, for example, I can very quickly and easily, I have to bring up my order management. That's where I've got it here. Let me unpin this. I had it docked to the side. You can very quickly and easily liquidate several of these positions. So it's as simple as saying, get out of these positions. And if I have the robotic trading component on, it may get into more positions. So I can actually turn that on just to see positions come in for automated strategies that I've developed in Wizard Lab. Very simple management, simple placement of orders. So for example, if I want to be long on a stock, we design the user interface to be as quick and efficient as possible. Right? I want to go long. Let's say I want to step over to the other side of the market. I send that order in, fills right away, shows up in my portfolio. This is the design philosophy of Prodigio: quickness and rapid execution. And so I'm going to showcase for you today how you can use, in particular, Wizard Lab amongst other features of the platform in order to quickly find new ideas, quickly react to new ideas, and to automate aspects of your online trading. So you see what happened just as I was speaking was some of my automated strategies found new positions. It put those positions on. It's respecting the limits of my account risk settings, and so now I'm in a number of positions. That's a total of, I can actually go to my order book to get a different tabular view of these positions. So I've got about 15 or so positions active right now, showing me my order fill quantities and my net profits and losses, etc. So going through really quick left to right, there's a number of views on Prodigio, such as your portfolio. Portfolio shows you your actively open positions. Order book is a simple tabulation of various trading events, such as your positions, the orders that are currently working, right? And so these look like these are stop orders at limit. These are working orders. And if I ever want to cancel any of these, you can just go right over here and you can cancel one of these. And so a number of orders just went in and they were filled. Those filled orders you will see in the filled orders section. And we separate the filled orders from all the cancels, and we do that intentionally because a lot of times your canceled orders, you may be interested in what they are, but they're usually not as important as the filled orders. So all these different sections combine to form the order book. We have quotes tabs which you can manage your symbol lists in, and there's a lot of information displayed in just the simple quotes table. In our next build, we have dramatically expanded the capability of the quotes table. In other words, you can now, in the next build, use the quotes table in order to perform any kind of technical analysis or to review the recent history of Wizard Lab rule signals in a matrix format across any arbitrary number of symbols. So there's a lot of work that went into that. Us on the tech geek side, we had to worry about all of our caches and all that kind of stuff. There's a brand new editor that allows you to go in and modify this table. But this is just your standard out-of-the-box quotes table. Allows you to manage various symbol lists. And these symbol lists become important because later on, when you develop an automated strategy, you can create and modify these symbol lists. And for example, I know I have an ETF list around here somewhere. Maybe I got rid of it from last time. Let me edit this. Okay, so here's this spider list is my ETF list for sector spiders. It's just a symbol list that I made. I saved it. I gave it a name. And what I can do with Prodigio is create a robotic trading strategy, and I can deploy it against all of the symbols inside of this list. So I can modify this at any time, but this is really just a quotes table that allows you to see the various lists that you're working on. All right, and of course I can modify this inline. Now this is not a spider symbol, but I had BAC up on a chart before, so you can just add that symbol to that list right from the quotes table. Prodigio comes with obviously a chart component, and this chart component is tied in with technical analysis studies, which is one of the most important parts of automated trading. And so of course you can set up your charts and you can put your technical analysis studies in here. There's a tab on the left which allows you to modify various settings for the chart, etc. And when I talk about building strategies or different strategies in the system, or when one of the other speakers comes on and talks about it, oftentimes when we build strategies, when we build automated strategies, we start right from the chart. And we start from the chart and we kind of build our ideas. We look for generalizations in the market. We look for intrinsic information, particularly in the relationships of, say, stocks to sectors. And I've spoken a lot about that in the past. But we try to extract this information out from the chart and we try to view this information by setting up rules or strategies that present this information to us in intelligent ways. So the goal here of using this automated system is trade idea generation. Usually we don't look for holy grail trading strategies, right? We don't do this, and the reason is because you can't just create a rule that captures the market perfectly and then you go and you take a vacation for 7 months and you come back and you're a billionaire. It doesn't work like that. We know that all of you, especially if you're using the Thinkorswim trading platform, you are kind of the creme de la creme. You are the smart, wise investors. You're the ones in control of your financial destiny. You know how to take information and process it. And it's which levels and which degrees that you're capable of processing that information which dictates the moves that you're going to make, right? And so I kind of alluded to this in prior chats. There's the basic level where you look at stocks and you look at their fundamentals, you look at their price movement, and you like or you dislike something. You look at, see right now this is looking at Schlumberger, and you look at this and you consider, am I going to go long on a position and invest in Schlumberger? Am I going to take a short-term shorting position, and ride this? Today is a kind of a down day. When you look at these charts, whether you know it or not, you form a small bias and you like something or you dislike something. I consider this kind of the level 1 base of analysis, but you can go much further, and that's where a lot of the tools that Prodigio provides, a lot of the tools that, say, Thinkorswim provides, it gives you those further levels. You can go down the levels of technical analysis so that you can develop very wise automated trading systems that propagate signals and present the ideas to you for which you can then kind of consume those ideas. And so that's the whole idea here. Take all of this math, give you an easy way to manipulate it, and then present it to you in a way that you can make decisions about trading. And if you get something which is general enough, automate those trades. For example, sometimes you can identify conditions in the market where, let's say, there's a rare trading event. Like gap traders do this a lot. Gap traders will look for specific patterns in the gaps of stocks from day to day. You can set up an automated system that automatically gets into those positions, and then of course you would want to go in and manage those positions. Of course, put stops and targets, etc. But this aside is all about explaining the philosophy of Prodigio, trade idea generation. So it's always very important to, especially in technical analysis, start with a chart. Look at what the oscillators are telling you. Look at what the price studies are telling you, and make generalizations, and then you think to yourself, how can I take advantage of this information? What is the chart telling me which I could then use to my trading advantage? Right? So here's two different technical analysis studies. Here's a MACD. This is a moving average convergence divergence study. They call it MACD. And this is a system of moving averages. I spoke specifically about MACD, I believe 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. You can find that in the video chat archives. But MACD is a system for recognizing swings in momentum. And so you can generalize things, such as you see that, right now it's kind of a down day, and you see that over the last couple days or week or so we're kind of in a downtrend that manifests in the MACD. And as you learn how to read these oscillators, and a lot of you know these in detail already, but you can tell just by the basic parameters of the MACD that yes, in fact, Schlumberger is following this momentum. We're kind of picking up speed on the downside, which manifests itself by all these red bars, and then it kind of gapped down today. And so it says this momentum is kind of picking up. It hasn't fundamentally changed direction. So you might want to be extremely cautious about purchasing this stock right now. Right? These are the kinds of ideas that you can generalize from technical analysis, and they show up in the numbers. So when I do my chart technical analysis, I look at things such as MACD. I look at CCI, which is Commodity Channel Index, and this is an oscillator the CCI, it's a momentum-based price oscillator, and I have to I just pulled this up on the chart right now. I have to review my definition for CCI, but you can find the generalizations. When it swings up, just look at price. What's happening? Price is moving up, right? So it is a price-based oscillator, and it's going to be similar in nature to an RSI. That's another one. It's relative strength index, which are looking for short-term momentum swings in the long interest versus the short interest. But what's wonderful about technical analysis is that out of the box, especially in Prodigio's Chart Trader Pro, you get a plurality of all of these technical analysis studies. And I can take these and I can look at what's happening against the price movements. Right? So let me try to find an oscillator here that is fun to talk about. Okay, here's RMI. RMI is something called the Relative Momentum Index. And in Wizard Lab, there's always descriptions of all the technical analysis. But as a technical trader, I can go to my toolbox, I can pull up an oscillator, and without even knowing what the oscillator is doing, I can compare that against the price and volume movement on the chart, and I can generalize. And so I look at RMI. Right now, I know that this is another momentum-based oscillator. Again, it's similar in nature to what, say, an RSI does. However, it views the price movements differently than the RSI. Each one of these indicators has their own value, and the way that you combine these together, particularly in Wizard Lab, gives you value as a trader for which you can build a system to show you when things happen, beyond what you can just see at first glance on a chart. But if I just watch the movement of the RMI against the price data, I can very clearly see that there is an intrinsic relationship. Price goes down. What happens to the RMI? It goes down. Price goes up. What happens to the RMI? It goes up. And this is a percentage-based oscillator, going from 0 to 100%. So I can, for example, create a system that looks at RMI, it looks at MACD, it looks at CCI. It combines all of these things together, and it tells me, say, when all of the stars align. Right? This is when opportunity happens. Now, they're all looking at the data in slightly different ways. So if a significant event is happening, you have a greater chance that all three different perspectives find the same event. So this can give you an idea of what you can do with technical analysis. And your mind can start to work. And you can say, all right, well, if I know it is a volatile day, and if I know that the recent momentum is starting to reverse, and I know that my price is way outside of its normal range, there might be a really great opportunity to trade the reversal. Right? So if you start thinking in terms of that, the technical analysis gives you the vision to see these things from the numbers. And so what I'm going to explain is how you can use Wizard Lab based off of the chart in order to automate these signals. And where we're going to end up is we're going to end up in trade optics, and we're going to end up in RTS strategies, which govern the robotic signals that generate auto trading on the account. Right, so we're going to go there, and then we're going to cover up, and I'm going to show you some of the other features that Prodigio has, which kind of ties it in with the scanning system. So in Prodigio with Wizard Lab, if I study charts, right, and if I kind of like get an idea for the way the market works, and I know to look at, say, broad market indicators, if I know to look at stocks of different sectors, right? So for example, if I look at so here's McDonald's, right? That's in a completely different sector than the tech stocks, right? Here's Apple. They're all in different sectors. If I kind of know these things, these basic things about trading, I can start to generalize my ideas. And the way to do that with technical analysis is by looking at various studies. And probably the simplest studies would be moving average based studies. But since we talk about simple moving averages a lot, let's talk about exponential moving averages. An exponential moving average EMA versus an SMA or a WMA, which is a weighted moving average, they work in different ways. And that's really just the only difference between them. Let's pull up simple moving average. And I can always, on these charts, I can always tweak the parameters of these charts. So let me change the colors here. Let's make that a thicker cyan color. And let's make this first one a thicker yellow color. Right, and so I'm looking at two different moving averages, and they are interpreting average price in two independent ways. The simple moving average over 20 periods. Notice these are both over 20 periods. The simple moving average, which is the teal or the cyan color, all that does is your standard spreadsheet formula. It looks at the last 20 periods, adds them up, and divides by 20. It can't get simpler than that. And so this line, it kind of shows you how that moves with respect to time. Right, and I know this is very basic, but let's say you compare this to a different style of average. Right, so you don't have to to get an average, you don't have to just add them up and divide by 20. You can do it in slightly more clever ways. I can weight it. And by weighting it, I can say, over these past 20 bars, instead of counting this value as one of the values, instead of counting this as one, instead of counting this as one, I can say double up or even triple up my latest value. And this might seem a little strange at first, but it's like saying, what if I took 3 parts this bar, 2 parts that bar, and 1 part that bar over a 3-period moving average? If I divided that by 3 plus 2 plus 1, which is 6, that's an average, but it gives more weighting to the more recent bar. And it's as simple as that. That's what an exponential moving average is. It has this kind of tail weighting to it. All you have to know is that it makes the average react quicker to the more recent price events. And so you can see that happening in the EMA. See this big downswing? The yellow line goes down faster than the teal one does. The teal takes more time to catch up. But those two different ways of looking at price average, they kind of play against each other. Right? So here you have a cross of these two averages, and if you really get thinking about it, you might start coming up with some ideas like, well, when the one moving average crosses above the other, maybe I have a momentum swing change, right? And if the EMA crosses over the SMA, well, because the EMA reacts quicker to the more recent price movements than the SMA does, maybe that's an indication of a change in momentum. And if I just look at these crosses, you can see that there were kind of swings in momentum. There's definitely a downswing and definitely an upswing. Now, your periods are going to determine lag on a moving average, right? And so these two events, they manifest themselves in the technical analysis, but you wouldn't want to create a holy grail trading system that only uses two moving averages. It doesn't work. You need to be a little smarter than that. All right, so here Prodigio just put on another position onto Apple for me. So you see that working order come in. It said average fill. So I went 25 shares long at 379.11. That's what's pretty cool about Prodigio. It could be working the trades, as you're doing your analysis. So the point is that I can look for these technical analysis-based setups which manifest themselves in the data, and we talk about smart ways to do that. For example, we talked about building a system in prior chats that combines RSI with MACD, and I demonstrated that by using even these basic technical analysis indicators and, say, creating strategies that generate signals in trade optics, it can bring profitable trade ideas and opportunities to the table. So how do you do this in Prodigio? This is all very cool. How do I get you started right now? If I have my idea from chart in Chart Trader Pro, I can go over to my Wizard Lab tab. And what this is an environment that allows you to create a trading system, which is called a strategy in Prodigio. And that system, that strategy, is composed of a number of rules. And rules are nothing more than how do I take technical analysis and get it to fire a signal. So just like if I run a backtest and it shows me where I went long and where I went short, that's what a rule is. A rule is perform two different moving average algorithms. Perform an EMA, an exponential moving average. Perform an SMA, simple moving average. And show me when they cross. That's a rule. It's when you take these formulas and you turn it into some kind of decision. So in other words, you take the raw numbers and you ask a question, a yes or no question on those numbers. And the kinds of questions I can ask are, tell me when values cross each other. Tell me when price gets way out of range or is outside of a pivot. Or tell me when price gets too close to a pivot value. Tell me when price breaks through support or resistance. Tell me when an oscillator gets out of range or is above the normal range. All of these questions you can ask by creating logical operators in Wizard Lab. And so I'm going to show you this very simple one with the EMA SMAs. So in Wizard Lab, if I wanted to ask the question, show me when the 20-period EMA crosses the 20-period SMA. Show me when this yellow line crosses the teal or cyan line. The way you do that in Wizard Lab is by creating a rule, which is a series of transformations. And this is all completely drag and drop. And so I can kind of walk through with you how you do this. All of these rules start with source data. And the idea behind the rule builder is that just as when you write a script, you have data flowing through the system. And I want to capture that data and I want to do something with it. I want to interpret it some way. I want to calculate something, run a formula against it. And so I can look at OHLCs, which are the candlesticks that come on the price chart. So everybody who is doing day or swing-based trading is really used to looking at these candlestick charts. This is actually the, everyone that I talk to, at least, this is their preferred chart. For a lot of reasons, chart packages like to default to bar charts, but everybody loves the candlesticks. Makes a lot of sense when you get used to reading them. They're extremely useful, and you can make very rapid decisions by looking at them. These OHLCs are the candlesticks, and it's nothing more than the open price, the high price, the low price, and the closed price for that interval. And what people do when they swing or day trade is they look at smaller intervals, and I know most of you guys know this, but you look at smaller intervals and it tells you a story of the trading activity that goes on during the day. And this story is what you use with technical analysis to interpret. So in Wizard Lab, you can capture these OHLC bars simply by using a source study. And so I can change this interval, and if I want to match that 15-minute chart, I can say start with 15-minute OHLCs. Take these 15-minute OHLCs, and what do I want to do? I want to model that question that I had asked of myself on the chart. I want to know when a 20-period exponential moving average crosses a 20-period simple moving average. So on the left-hand side, I have my toolbox, which has all of the studies in the system. If I scroll down under technical analysis, I can find my EMA study. And this is where you find the description that we have for these technical analysis values. I can drag this out. And the way this works is you connect a series of outputs to inputs. And so what this means to Wizard Lab is take the OHLC values, take the output of those values, which in the case of an OHLC is a close value, the close price, and later I'll show you how you can use the open, the high, or the low instead of the close. But take the close price and send it as the input into that EMA study. So what you're actually doing here is you're writing a script without knowing the script. And it's very easy. It becomes literally a series of connect the dots where you just wire the system. Or if you want to think about it in terms of a schematic, you're literally wiring the system. And when this rule gets deployed onto the server, you've literally wired everything together so that we plug it in and then we crunch all the numbers and we send the results. So you're literally designing, if you want to think of it like a circuit almost. You're just wiring the schematic of logic. So I can change this periods to 20, and this represents a 20-period exponential moving average. This will give me the yellow line on my chart. And this yellow line is now the output of that EMA study. And I can do whatever I want with this output. So I know that I want to look for crosses between EMA and SMA. Right? So let's model the SMA. Once again, I can scroll up to the source data and I can grab OHLC and drag it out onto my canvas. You can always right click on these and you can say, well, you have to select it with a left click. You can always right click and say copy and paste. Right? So you can always copy and paste things in line here. But I can compare a 20-period exponential moving average against a 20-period simple moving average. So let me scroll down and find the simple moving average here. And I can connect the output of the OHLC into the input of the SMA, and I can change this period number to 20. And now I've got an output for exponential moving averages and an output for simple moving averages. And if I want to ask the question, tell me when they cross, I have a series of logical operators, and I can do a lot with these logical operators. In some of the chats we talk specifically about all the different kinds of logical operators. 3 of them are particularly useful. There's cross, cross above, and cross below. Now usually you would want to use the cross above and cross below because crossing above a value is obviously the opposite of crossing below. But if you want to know both at the same time, you can use this cross operator. And if I drag this out, you'll notice that this study has 2 inputs, input A and input B. And I can take the output of the exponential moving average and put it into one of the inputs, and I can take the output of the simple moving average and put it into the other input. And what this does is now the system will be calculating your 20-period exponential moving average. It will be calculating your 20-period simple moving average. And it will then be looking for when the 2 cross about each other. When that happens, I can do whatever I want with that signal. It's a logical signal. You see the icon here says true or false. And this signal I can then use in another context. For example, I can use the AND logical operator to combine this with more rules, and that's how you get more than one technical analysis study to line up with another. And when I'm done, I can go into trade actions and pull this signal study out. And this is the ending node of the study. If I send this output into this input, I've completed the study, right? And I can then save this as some kind of EMA SMA cross. I can just give it a name. I can give it a description. And it's always important that you give this a good description so that later on when you're looking at it in your toolboxes you can remember what the rule was about. But that's how you build a rule based on the technical analysis. And so I can kind of zoom out and I can kind of get a bird's eye view of the rule. This is a drag and drop canvas, so I can move things around. I can kind of collapse things to give myself more space on the canvas, etc. But the general idea of working with Wizard Lab is that you're connecting a series of outputs into inputs, and you're wiring the studies that represent both technical analysis and logic together. You're wiring them together, creating this kind of schematic, which is a rule, and that rule gets published into the engine that runs on the server, minimizing latencies and producing signals as fast as possible. Another quick thing, because I mentioned that I would show you how to do this, we have a toolbox called adapters. And what the adapters do is it allows you to interpret a study in a different way. And we have a couple chats where we talk specifically about adapters, but for an OHLC study, one way to get, for example, the high price instead of the close value is you could go to adapters, scroll down, and you can take a high adapter. And what this does, if I insert it here, I can always unconnect these by just like dragging them out. And if I insert this high adapter in between the OHLC and the EMA, what that does is it tells the system when you calculate the EMA, use as your input the high price of the OHLC. So you can redirect and reinterpret these values in any way that you want. Specifically, if you're looking at one of these band studies, for example, a Bollinger Band study, right, or a Keltner channel, right? But I like Bollinger Bands a lot because they use standard deviations. Standard deviations are very useful. When I get a Bollinger Band study, I get an upper band, a middle band, which you see it's kind of running over my cyan line. It kind of made this a different shade of green. And I've got my lower Bollinger Band. That comes as one study, and if I want the upper band, I use the upper adapter. If I want the lower band, I use the lower adapter. By default, it's going to give you the middle band. So that's a little bit about adapters and how you would use those. But you build your library of rules in Prodigio, right? And so they all show up when you save these. They show up in My Rules. And so I had just created a rule called EMA SMA cross. That shows up in your My Rules, and you can always use these again. If I make a new rule, I can use this as the input to another rule, right? And this gives me a signal, a true or false signal when the signal fires. And I can do things like this. I can say, all right, I want this rule to fire and let me pick one at random, right? I want some kind of gap thing to fire, and I want another rule to fire. I can chain these indefinitely, right? And when I'm done, I can again end the rule with a signal. And this creates another rule, right, based on these conditions that when all of these things align, it will fire, and I can then use this signal however I want. So let's talk about how to use those signals. When you create your rules, you can go to step 2, which is the strategy builder. And the strategy builder defines how you combine those rules together to create a trading system. And we're going to eventually get this trading system to first backtest, but then we're going to deploy it in trade optics and then RTS trading. So how would you build a strategy? It's a very simple kind of top to bottom logic flow here. You have two panels over here, one which is for scanning rules, one which is for management rules. From the scanning panel, for every strategy, you select exactly one scanning rule. So I can scroll down to this EMA SMA cross, and if I drag this into the scanning rule, right now there's only one scanning rule allowed because the system allows you to create as many strategies as you want and have multiple management rules, and I'll talk about the difference between those. But what the scanning rule does is it runs the rule that you've defined on the server, and when the signal fires, when it's time to do some trade action, you can specify here how you would want it to trade. Right now, again, as I mentioned, there's two ways to use the system. First is trade optics, and the other is RTS trading. Trade optics is just a signal queue. It's an alert, basically. When you get an entry into the trade optics, it means your scanning rule has been found, and it's going to present it in a queue for you. And just to give you a glimpse, I'm running a set of short strategies here, as it finds the signals, it populates my queue with the signals that it found. So 1239, this is the most recent signal on Amgen. For this strategy, it'll find a signal, and when I hit trade now, it'll load it into the chart, and it will demonstrate for me where that short signal was found based on the strategy and based on the scanning rule of that strategy. But you can also specify your order parameters, and this would be for backtesting or it would be for RTS trading. So for example, the first parameter is whether you would buy or sell. Now this is important. Every strategy has a long or a short orientation. And the reason why this is the case is because we want you to be able to manage your long strategies independently from your short strategies, because more often than not, the logic changes depending on if you are going to take a long position or if you're going to take a short position. And one of the words of wisdom that I had learned quite a while ago from speaking with traders and learning, about my own trading was that markets move up and down at different rates. What that means is they tend to say that when the stock prices rise, when markets rise, when prices go up, that tends to happen at a slower rate than when prices go down. Right? So in other words, when markets have these crashes or when a stock loses money with time, the advice that I had received, which I find manifests itself a lot, is that when markets go down, it tends to happen at a faster rate than when markets go up. Now, there's been a lot of volatility, obviously, this year, but where this comes from is if you look at price with respect to time over 10 years, 20 years, obviously the value of the markets is much higher than it was 30 years ago. Right? It gets a little questionable when you talk about 10 years ago, but when you say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, certainly when I look back far enough, these prices rise with time despite their crashes. So this goes back to here, and the idea is here's a kind of like one of the crashes, right? Then it recovers, right? Then it crashes, and the idea is that when it goes down, the rate at which it goes down is much faster than the rate at which it goes up. So for not just for this reason, but also for others, when you create strategies in Wizard Lab, you specify if it's a long strategy or a short strategy. And you can create as many strategies as you want. So you can create a set of long strategies and short strategies, and you can run them independently of one another or at the same time. But you can also specify the order parameters. And so for entry orders, you can enter in at market, at limit, or you can do one of these kind of stop entries, which is a little more sophisticated, that kind of waits for price to reach a threshold. But I can say something like go in at limit and tie the order in to, let's say, if I want to go long, let's say go across to the bid, but go 1 penny underneath the bid. Right? And we always have this example here where the example kind of gives you a demo of what that would look like. These are all relative. When you deploy a strategy, you're deploying it against a symbol list, as I had mentioned earlier when I was showing you the quotes tab. That list might have 100 different instruments in it. Each one of those instruments is going to be trading at a different price. So if you're going to create an automated system, or if you're going to run this against a backtest, you have to basically create a rule which says, how should I place the order? And if I'm going to place a limit order, there's a few things I can use. For example, I can go off of the last price, I can go off of the bid of the quote, the NBBO quote, that's the level 1 quote, the best bid and the best offer. And I can create a rule that says, find out what the bid is and place the order 1 cent below it. So obviously this price is going to be a lot different on a $100 stock than it will be for a $20 stock. So we have our example, and it's set to around $50, just to give you an idea. So in this example, if the rule triggered in the last price was $50, if the spread, right, if the bid was $49.98 and if the ask was $50.02, it's going to go to the bid. And I'm sorry, I should have been pegging to the ask. If I'm going long, the other side of the market is the offer. If I go to the offer minus a penny, it's going to go to the ask minus 1 cent. And this is why I have the example here, because it's really easy to get tied up. So when you look at the example, it's completely unambiguous. You say, all right, here's the spread, and I want 1 cent under 50.02. So I better make sure in the yellow it says put the limit order to buy at 50.01. You can also specify various timeouts. If I choose a limit order, I can allow that limit order to time out after a certain period of time. And that's important because, especially if you're managing an automated system, if you create an automated system and you run this, if you place a limit order and if that limit order does not fill within 15 minutes, price may have moved away from your limit order and you would want the automated system to cancel that order. You can tell it when to cancel that order by specifying a limit timeout. There's also another neat little parameter in here called cool-off period. And what this allows you to do is, especially if you are just building automated trading systems for the first time, sometimes it's easy to create a system which is signal hungry. What I mean by that is it fires a lot of signals one after another. Right? So for example, you create a system where you look for the price greater than a moving average. Well, that price might be greater than the moving average for, say, 20 consecutive periods. And if it's a 1-minute based strategy, you're going to get 20 signals in 20 minutes. If you want to govern this and protect against that kind of logic, you can say something like, let the cool-off period be 5 minutes. And what that means is this will only get into a position on a per symbol basis once every 5 minutes. It just guarantees that no matter what you do in your logic, it will only get into a position every 5 minutes. And this depends on your strategy. For some strategies you might want this, for others you may not want this. So this is an optional parameter for the strategy builder. The other aspect to building strategies is managing a position. And this applies only to RTS positions. So if we're going to deploy this in trade optics, it doesn't really affect us, but it's important to talk about. If I deploy this to RTS trading and the scan signals get into positions, I can specify a series of rules to tell the system how to manage this position. And I can use the logic from any of the technical analysis that I had done when I built my rules. And so you can always drag any one of these out. But the most popular ones to use are the order rules. And these are very easy to understand. If I drag an order rule out, you see it says order here, what that means is when the robotic system or when the backtest enters into a position, it will immediately place an order with the intention of managing that position. So that's important for stops and targets, trailing stops. Now, a stop order is one of the most basic. That's when you set an order to trigger if price moves away from my entry price. So I can specify, I like to use the percentage-based stops here. And if I say something like 0.5% stop here, you have stop and trailing stop. This will put a stop order in to get out of the position if the position moves away from the open price by 0.5%. And so you can get an idea on this. I'm at a very low resolution. But if a position opens at $50.01 at 0.5%, it's going to put a stop order to sell. Right? This is for a long position. This is always the management's always the for closing a position. It's always the opposite of the entry side. And it's going to put a stop order to sell in at 49.76. Now the closing position is for liquidating positions. You can also put in logic to add to a position. And this is something which is a little bit more advanced, but you can scale into positions based on logic as well. In my opinion, it's much more important to understand the fundamentals of managing the closing or liquidation side of the position. So when I create a strategy, I can save this as, and this is my EMA SMA cross. And in step 3, I can run this in a backtest. And the backtesting system, when I open this, it's already kind of loaded if I save my strategy. I can select the symbol list to run the backtest on, so I'm selecting S&P 100. And I can run through these parameters and I can specify simulated or raw mode backtest. Now, simulated portfolio backtest, if I press this edit button right here, this will open a dialog to set my backtest risk parameter settings. So for example, I can specify my buying power, I can specify my drawdowns, my percentage deployments of per trade allocation, and we kind of talk about these in some of the other chats, but they more or less you can kind of read through them. It basically says to the system, if I have this much buying power and if I want to trade 10 automated positions at once, how much money should I allocate to each one of those positions? And usually they're percentage based, etc. Simulated portfolio backtest will limit the trading done in backtest. But there's also a raw mode backtest, and what that does is it completely ignores buying power and it shows you all of the positions, assuming that you have kind of an infinite buying power. That's important to know if your rule is generating signals when you expect them to be generating the signals. So I can, for example, run this on a simulated portfolio backtest. It'll start running that and it'll give me a collection of results. And these results show me how this strategy traded with respect to time. And you'll notice I'm not doing anything too intelligent here. I'm just doing an EMA SMA cross with a stop. I'm not capturing any profits ever. Right? So because I'm not capturing any profits, if I let the system manage it, my stop order is going to kick in and it's not going to manage it. So this gives you an idea for how the system works, and it's step 3 of building your strategy, because you want to validate the logic. So that's why we build it right in as kind of a third step. But you can backtest as much as you want. And this allows you to develop your strategy. And once you've gotten your strategy to a point where you're ready to kind of see these signals, you can go to step 4, which is deployment. And the idea behind deployment is very simple. You're publishing your strategy, right? And so you can deploy to RTS and trade optics. Let's talk briefly about trade optics, which I showed a little bit earlier. And the idea behind trade optics is that all of the strategies you build are here for deployment. And I can scroll down to this EMA SMA cross. I can pick the symbol list I want it to trade on. Maybe I want it to trade on that spider list that I had built before. And if I select the checkbox, that is now deployed on the server. And if I collapse this, with time I will get signals as they happen come into my trade optics. And these signals will trigger anytime the scan rule finds a trading opportunity. And I can then evaluate these trading opportunities. As they come in, as I get new ideas, I can say, okay, load GE. And it gave me a trading idea on GE to go short here. Right, now this is based on, anyone who's been watching these videos knows I have a set of strategies which are very basic and they're very volatile. They kind of give me a lot of signals. These upper Bollinger Band with RSI is one of them. So these were designed just to give me a lot of signals. According to this logic, it says go short now. Right, and that's based on some very rapid conditions. But these signals can be based on any combination of technical analysis that you can think of. And you can watch some of these chats. You can listen to Shadow Trader. You can discuss in forums and chat rooms about what are some cool things to look at to give me some interesting trading opportunities. But there's a whole library of things out there that you can automate to present trade ideas. One thing that I forgot to mention, I also want to talk about some of the new features that we're building. All right, one of them is in backtest. In backtest, in our new system, we have an expanded backtesting system, which goes back much farther in time than our current system. And we have some statistics on that, but the backtesting system, it already goes back pretty far, but we've extended it, and it goes back very, very far. what's interesting is that our level of intraday data can now go back farther than pretty much anybody else that we've seen out there. I don't have a date, but I know it goes back much farther than the 2 or 3 years. It might go back 4 years on 1 minute data, which is a lot bigger than the other systems that we've seen out there. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're pretty excited to bring that to you. The other big thing is we're building this scanning system. There's a lot of different features and components that are being put together for that now. This will expand on the trade vision, right? So let me get back to that. Let me wrap up this conversation of the trade optics by talking about the RTS strategies. So just like I get my signals from my strategy in the trade optics queue, if I deploy to RTS strategies, and it has the exact same interface that the trade optics does, if I deploy against spider list EMA SMA cross, and if I activate RTS trading, you see it's enabled right now, when this strategy finds positions, and let me bring this out, let me liquidate everything. Right, so I actually have a button to exit all. That'll get out of all the positions at market. So this exits everything, and we've still got an order working here, but if I deploy my strategy to RTS trading, when it finds new trading strategies, as you've seen, they come in and they will respect the risk parameter settings in order to auto trade the account. So now I've taken away one more step. Instead of having to look manually at every signal and having to elect to trade everyone one by one. And so, for example, when I push this button, it populates the order entry with a guild. I can send another order in here, and I just went short again guild. Because I saw down here it was already short, so it's short another 100. Instead of doing all that manually one by one, you can deploy to RTS trading and have the whole system be entirely automated. You can have the whole system be managed by your risk parameters and the management rules that you put together in your strategy. So there's a lot that you can do with this to bring all these ideas together, and you can go all the way and build a fully automated system using Prodigio. The remaining tabs, which I started talking about earlier, are, for example, say Trade Vision. Trade Vision has a series of market views, and it's very rudimentary in this version. You have market advancers, market decliners. You have pivots, right? We talk a lot about the value of pivots. Pivots comes up in the Shadow Trader chats very often. They're very important, critical threshold values. They're so important that Shadow Trader has devised their own formula for pivots, which complements some of the other formulas that you see out there. But Trade Vision, it's kind of like the idea is scanning the market for opportunity. And we've created a system that ties in with the quotes tables. It ties in with the Wizard Lab back-end systems. And we have this entire network of scanning that we've put together that we kind of converge into your specific scanning criterion. And so this system is tied together with a number of other features that we're adding with the goal in mind of being able to perform a lot of this technical analysis, collect all of the information together, and rapidly change your view of that information. Right? So to be critical, one of the things that we've observed that is fairly weak in the marketplace, when you look at, say, scanning systems, or when you look at heat maps or things like that, etc., one of the things which is not very useful is that they are very restrictive on what you can look at. They're very restrictive, and they don't give you a whole lot of play. In other words, you know, they say, okay, well, you can look at market cap, but you can't look, and you can look at dividend yield, but you can't look at earnings per share to dividend ratio yield. You can't look at that. That's very restrictive, and what we've done is we've created a system that performs all of the scanning and packages all of the results in a way to give you maximum flexibility, that if you want to see all of these conditions, you can turn them on and turn them off at will, and it rapidly and quickly kind of brings the results together. So for example, you now will have a customizable market watch with advancers decliners that goes exponentially beyond what we have today and what we believe is available in the market. So we're really excited to bring you these active trader platform features, and we're probably going to get to show some of these off in next week's chat. So you can look forward to that. And I want to conclude with today by saying thank you everyone for joining me. If this is your first time seeing the Prodigio system, I hope I've given you an idea for what you can do with all of these tools available to you. Remember to keep the Prodigio philosophy in mind. It's all about trade idea generation. Prodigio was designed to accommodate many of the things that we find lacking in other trading platforms. And the idea is bring together this library of formulas, extract the information from the marketplace, and present it in ways that bring the ideas to you. So again, this video archive will be on the website prodigiorts.net under the video archive. You can always ask questions to Prodigio at thinkorswim.com and join us here during the week in the chat. There's always people available to talk about strategies, etc., and you can always post questions on the forum. Follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/wizardlab, and as always, my name is Brian Wagner. I'm the Chief Architect of Prodigio RTS, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today for today's chat. We'll see you all again next week. Great trading, happy holidays everyone, and I wish you the best. Take care everyone.